September girl, I am so scared today. Already 28, still haven't saved the world. Woke up this morning to nothing. I recognized everything changed and I never saw it coming. Now they're all 5 billion disappointed souls scraping around in my disappointed mind. And for the first time in my life, I am afraid of changing because everything's changing without me.
And that it is called a great sign. No other sign in the Bible is called a great sign, a mega sign. What is this sign? A woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. We have this alignment of the constellation Virgo, the 9 stars of Leo. We have the 3 planets, Venus, Mars, and Mercury, all lining up on September 2017. The last time that this happened, it was the 5th of August, 3915 BC. The next time it's going to happen, it's going to be the woman giving birth. Exactly at that time, the king planet Jupiter will exit the matrix, or the womb of Virgo. That will be the 23rd of September 2017. And so as far as I know, I was the only one on YouTube who was saying that if this is going to be fulfilled next year, then we can count back 9 months. And there should be something extremely significant that will happen on that day. And it should happen to Israel because this sign is a sign of Israel. The woman with the 12 stars was the image that Joseph dreamt about back in Genesis. And he knew right away, his parents knew, his brothers knew, that this was an image of Israel. And so as far as I know, I was the only person saying, count back 9 months, you will get conception on the 23rd of December, 2016. Something major should happen to Israel. And so what has happened? Aligning with the conception, not the birth, which is next year, but the conception 9 months before, was UN Resolution 2334. This piece of abomination is Obama's last-minute ambush against Israel. A real slap in the face. He's got no power right now to do very much. He can't initiate foreign policy, but he just gave Benjamin Netanyahu, God's end-time prime minister, a slap in the face by getting the UN, and there's a lot of evidence that Israel says they have, that they got Ukraine and other nations to vote against Israel while they chose for the first time to abstain. This has never happened before. So you think about this. Since the creation of the UN, America has always vetoed these, negative resolutions against Israel. But this time they abstained, they allowed it to go through, and this resolution called 2334 passed on the 23rd of December, 2016. Now John Kerry, this man aspired to be president before. Thank God he didn't win. He said Israel can be Jewish or it can be democratic, but not both. What kind of illogical, nonsensical statement is that? What kind of racist statement is that? Israel can be Jewish or it can be democratic, but not both. So he's saying that Israel must accept the two-state solution. Now, I have 2 perspectives on this that I want the Christian world to understand. First of all, if you believe in the so-called two-state solution, let me explain to you something. If you look on the map, the old map back in the 1920s, all right, when Israel was being divided, at that time they called it the land of Palestine, and they were figuring out a place for Jews to live, and all of that area belonged to the Jews historically. We have the Bible to prove that they were living there for thousands of years. And they took Israel, the entire Palestine, and they gave more than 70% and divided it to the Arabs, and they called that piece of Palestine Jordan. The Hashemite kingdom of Jordan is the present-day state of Palestine. It's where Palestinians went to live. Then less than 30% was given, a sliver of land was given to the Jews, and that's called the state of Israel. And not content with that, even though the Muslims have 600 times more land. If you look on the map, 600 times more land than the Jews have. And yet they're still debating over that tiny sliver of land and saying Israel must give up Gaza, must give up the West Bank, must give up even piece of Jerusalem. No other nation in the world has ever been held to the standard that Israel is being held to. It is just nearly impossible. And even though the Palestinians already have a Palestinian state and their flags look, nearly identical, the only difference between the flag of Palestine and the flag of the Kingdom of Jordan is one star. You know that, right? So they already have a state, and if they felt discriminated, if they felt persecuted in Israel, but they're actually more prosperous in Israel, they have more freedom, more democracy, but if they felt slighted and persecuted, guess what? They could do aliyah to any of the nations that surround Israel. But you know what? Even those nations don't want to take the Palestinians. Two-state solution. There is a two-state problem. There is a two-state problem. Let me explain to you. No nation in the world has been held to the standard of Israel. If other nations were, then you would have to consider two-state solutions for many, many other countries. Australia would be one of them. We have come here and occupied Aboriginal land. Is that true? We've occupied Aboriginal land. So in order to treat Aborigines correctly, we shouldn't put them into their own Aboriginal reserves. They should get their own state. And they should get a bigger state than we have. But guess what? Nobody fusses over that in Australia. Right? The British have come and conquered, taken the land, put the flag up with the Union Jack up, and everyone says, okay, we accept it. Time to move on. History, keeps moving. So we don't put the same standard on Australia. How about if we did it to America? What would happen? How about a two-state solution for the American Indians? See, Americans came in, took over the American Indians' land, gave them disease, killed them in war. The American Indians weren't perfect either, of course. They also were brutal. They also were literally barbaric in many ways, right? But it was their land. So to be fair, America should give up Washington, D.C., we should give up lots of other states to the American Indians for them to have a separate, bona fide, sovereign state. Two-state solution. If you want it for one, if you want it for Israel, you should do it, to be fair, for all the other nations. Not only that, we got a lot of problems in America because Americans took over a piece of land from Mexico. It's still named New Mexico. So why don't we divvy up, separate, create a two-state solution in which Americans can live happily and New Mexico can go happily back to Mexico. Mexicans would be happy, Americans would be happy. That's actually one of the reasons why Mexicans come into America illegally and they think we're not illegal, because you took New Mexico, you took California, you took Arizona, so it actually belongs to us historically. So if you want the two-state solution, you have to carve off the west coast of America, all right, and give it back to Mexico. That would be fair. When America does that, then Israel can give up its land for Palestinians. China needs to give up its claim to Taiwan permanently. And the UN Security Council should condemn China for not giving up Taiwan. And once that's done, we need to then demand that China give up Tibet. Because Tibet has been very oppressed and they feel imposed upon. So what the world needs to do is to impose a two-state solution on China. If you believe in the two-state solution for Israel, which you do, Mr. John Kerry, seems to be really pushing hard at creating turmoil in the Middle East, and it looks like World War III with Russia. Now, if you don't know, Russia, they're pretty smart. Years and years ago, there was a movie called The Hunt for Red October, about a submarine. And it looks like a repeat of The Hunt of Red October right now, because the Americans are very brash and ready to fight and ready to bomb the heck out of people in the movie. And in that movie, the Russians were calm, cool, and collected. And even though they had a lot of reason to go to war, even in the movie, they decided they're going to self-control. So they say this, that the Russians play chess while the Americans play checkers. So Putin has done exactly that. Obama has not only slapped Israel in the face, he's accusing Russia with no disclosure of any evidence of hacking the election. He has expelled 95 diplomats out of U.S. territory. And normally, Russia would do the same, tit for tat. Okay, you expel 95, we expel 95 of your diplomats. But Putin says, it's Christmas. We want the diplomats' children to enjoy a wonderful Christmas in Russia. We're not going to create any disturbance. We're not going to go into kitchen diplomacy, as he calls it. And he says, Obama's got no power anyway because we're waiting for the foreign policy of the next administration, Donald Trump. He's just had his ambassador shot on TV in Turkey. Didn't react. He had a plane shot down in Turkey. Didn't react. For all those Americans who believe Russia is your enemy, you have a pretty wise, calm, and collected enemy. But you know, the media constantly trying to push for war because the media is a tool of leftist tyranny. And they're trying to constantly get our children, our young men, killed in wars. So we're not going to put up with that. We're fed up with that. Any of you want to send your son to Obama's war? Because Australia always goes, and some of you have sons that are in the military. You know what? We're fed up. We're not going to your war.